What's going on, everyone? I'm recording this video today because one of my clients named Seth reached out to me and he basically asked me this question. He said, Rich, I've gotten to 100K a year. I really want to go to 500K, but I know that the skills and the mindsets and the strategies that got me to 100K, that got me to six figures, probably aren't going to get me to the next milestone. And one, I thought it was a great question. And rather than just respond to him and just type something up or just talk to him and tell him, I figured I would collect my thoughts and record this in a video or a podcast so everyone can see this. So I have a bit of experience with this. I've now scaled two businesses to that 500K plus a year profit milestone. First, my design agency, which I ran for over a decade, and now my kind of business education, consulting, thought leadership type business. Okay. And then I've also seen under the hoods of a lot of my clients' businesses where I've kind of helped them navigate the milestones from 100K to 250K to 500K as solopreneurs. So that's what we're going to get into in this video. Let's get right into it. So the first shift that needs to take place is you need to pick a path. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Well, generally speaking, a 100K a year business, a six-figure business, the owner, once you reach that milestone, you tend to be kind of locked in. And what I see happen is they'll be maxed out on two things: time and money. So they're maxed out in time in that they just don't have any more free space in their schedule to maneuver. And as a result, the path to scaling seems impossible because if you don't have any more hours and your income is tied to your hours, how are you possibly going to make more money? Okay. And this kind of like locked down syndrome that I see is actually a symptom of what I'm going to talk about here, which is the shift from 100K to 500K mindset. Okay. And the shift is that around that six-figure mark, people don't have a strategy. Okay. So they tend to kind of try to be in the messy middle. Okay. Where they are medium price, right? Middle of the road, but still very much involved in fulfillment and working with clients and things like that. And what happens there is you actually end up being great at nothing. And this increases a ton of complexity and leads to a really inefficient business. Okay. And what basically happens here is you have two paths that you can go down. One of the beauties of running a solopreneur business is that you have choices and the constraints actually lead to a lot of creativity. But the problem is when you leave yourself open with too many options, you don't actually make any leveraged decisions. So the way that I see it is you've got two paths that you can go down, and either path works, but it's really important to pick a North Star because otherwise you're just not going to get the most bang for your buck. Okay. As I'll talk about later in what is this, number 7, your time is the gold. Your time is the biggest bottleneck in your business as a solopreneur. So we really need to make strategic decisions about how we deploy our time to get the most out of it. So the two paths that I want to talk about are what I call first, an expert business, and second, a marketing business. And either's fine, either works. You have to decide what makes the most sense for you. But the first one is an expert business. And when you're running an expert business, you're generally speaking involved in the fulfillment because the core of the value that you create is actually your deep expertise. And as you continue to go deeper and deeper into expertise, as a result, the value that you can provide and the prices that you can charge continue to increase as well. Okay, so what this looks like in a business context and the way that you scale it is by increasing your price and increasing your value consistently. An agency that went down this path would be something like having only 5 to 8 clients, delegating a lot of the work, only working in your zone of genius where the strategy is, where you're kind of like at your peak of skill, okay? And then keeping those rates really high. On the consulting side of things, this might look like leverage fulfillment with a large group of clients all being fulfilled at once at a high price point, or a very high touch one-on-one engagement where you're potentially even talking about six-figure engagements there. Now, the beauty of this expert business where you are optimizing for scaling with price is marketing is a lot easier because if you only need 5 to 8 clients, you don't need to have the world's biggest platform in order to run this business. Like when I was running my agency, I didn't have any social media at all, barely had a website, and all the clients that came in were from referrals and relationships. And it turns out, if you're scaling with price, 5 to 8 clients is enough to get you to $500,000 a year. Okay, so you don't need to market as much, but what you do need to focus on is fulfillment, creating value with your clients, and consistently pushing that lever of scaling with price that we'll talk about more. Okay. And the levers that you're going to move over and over again are price, okay, scaling with price, getting better at sales, okay, and going deeper and deeper into your expertise. Okay, so the second option is called a marketing business. And what I mean by that is essentially a business where you, as the solopreneur, are responsible for zero fulfillment. Okay, so you're not doing anything with clients, you're not doing any done for you, done with you stuff. Whatever it is that you sell, you can sell at scale without your hours taking a hit at all. And the way that you grow this business and take this thing to 500K and beyond is you scale with systems and marketing as opposed to price and value. Okay, so fulfillment is going to be completely minimalist. You are not involved. That could be selling something like, I don't know, a digital product or something like that, where you can build once, sell a million times. Okay, and minimalist fulfillment, maximalist marketing. So essentially, this is a marketing business for a reason. Okay, so you're selling something for, or you're creating something for as cheap as possible with zero fulfillment. And the levers that you push in order to scale this business are having a big audience. Okay, building out a content machine. Most of your time as a founder is going to be working on content, messaging, product audience alignment, and just being extremely consistent over a long period of time. So you will spend time building a product, but once it's done, there will be no longer a cost to fulfill on it. Okay, so either one of these paths work, right? So scaling with price or scaling with marketing, they both work. The middle is kind of the danger zone. And that's the problem where most people get stuck, is because they don't say, I'm going to forego marketing in order to focus on price and value. Or if they say, I'm going to forego price in order to focus on marketing and volume. Okay. If you don't pick one of those, you're stuck in the middle and you will be maxed out on time and maxed out on money. So you really need to pick a North Star if you're going to go down this path. Now, just a heads up for the rest of this video, a lot of this advice will pertain to the first path, which is the expert business. There's also a lot of it that are going to pertain to both, but the marketing business in and of itself is kind of its own beast. I'll probably record something different about that at another point, but you'll see that many of these points are going to relate to this idea of scaling with price and value. And then there's just some global principles that are 100K to 500K, like principles that don't change no matter what. Okay. So the next move, and this is kind of the way that I ran my business, is to scale with price. And I see this for most people as the fastest way to get to $500,000 in profit and above. And I firmly believe, I've seen it myself, I've seen it with my clients, you can get all the way to $500,000 to $1 million with a tiny, tiny team of contractors, scaling with price, focused on your expertise. So I'll give you a very tangible example. My agency, its final form basically looked like this. Okay, 6 to 8 clients a year, not a lot of clients. All right, minimum rate was $60,000. So we will not take on any project unless it was 60 grand or more. For me to run it, it would take anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week. Sometimes less, sometimes it was 8, sometimes it was 10, sometimes it was 23. You know, you never really know, but on average, 15 to 20 hours a week, which is what I was optimizing for at the time. Okay. So I was really focused on lifestyle at that stage in my business, and I wanted to keep those hours very low. And yeah, in its like most optimized form, 520K a year. And I knew that if I kept the model exactly the same and all I needed to do was just push my work double, right? I would have reached $1 million, okay, in profit. So 7 figures with basically just me, small team, probably would have been a total of, I don't know, 10 to 12 clients, maybe only 8. It really just depends. But at that point, I was optimizing for lifestyle. So I felt like that 500K number was my enough number, and I didn't want to do what it took to scale to get to that point. Okay. So why scaling with price? Why do we want to grow our business with price? Well, let's just think about it for a second. So if you want to make more money, that's what scaling is, right? Making the number go up. And as a solopreneur business, we're optimizing for profit, right? We're not optimizing for an exit. You're not optimizing to be acquired. We're not optimizing to build an asset. We are optimizing for profit and cash flow. Okay. This is an important caveat. But if you want to grow the business, you basically have 2 options no matter what. Okay. You can get more customers. Okay. If you have 10 customers and then you have 20 and you charge them all the same price, your business will be doubled at the end. Now, the downside to that is every customer that you introduce into your business includes more complexity, more time to fulfill, and you have to market more in order to do that. And as I've been talking about, and I'll talk about this more at the end, when you're a solopreneur, supply is based on your time. The fundamental constraint for the business at the end of the day is your time as a business owner. And every hour needs to have the highest value possible. Okay. So getting more customers is not a great path to scale. All right. So on the other side of the coin, you can charge more money. Okay. And make more money for each client. And two ways that you can do that is instead of working with the client for 6 months, you can work with them for 12 months and charge them, a monthly retainer. That would be making more money from each client. Or you can increase the cost, increase the rate. All right. And because supply is limited by our time, getting more customers is not a good way to grow the business. So basically, if you want to scale with price, you're really going to need to limit your supply. Okay. Because supply is our time. So at the end of the day, you really need to be thinking about growing your business by scaling it with price, okay? And continuing to push price as the lever that's going to grow the business as opposed to scaling with more clients. And a really easy thought experiment that will basically uncover everything you need to know. Let's say you're at 6 figures right now, 100K. Just sit down, grab a piece of paper, ask yourself this question. How can I charge 5 times whatever I'm charging now? Okay, because that's the path from 100K to 500K is 5x. If you can figure out how to 5x what you're charging now, then you have a $500,000 business. And if you actually answer that question honestly, it's going to reveal the things that need to take place in order to take you from here to there. So it could be a question like, oh, I need better clients, or maybe there's not enough value in the services that I provide, or maybe I'm just not good at sales and I'm not good at articulating. But let's say, you charge 10 grand for a project right now, and I need to ask myself, and you're maxed out, right? You don't have any more time. So you ask yourself, okay, well, what would it look like if I charged 50 grand for the same thing? What would I need to do? Who would I need to be in order to get there? Okay. And that is the path to growth. All right. So number 3 is an extension of this scaling with price thing. And it's around this idea that we do not need any more clients. Okay. The reason that businesses don't scale is because our prices are too low, we're doing too much work, and we think the solution is more clients. Okay. And more clients are not the answer to scaling a business. You think more clients, more money, right? No, because here's what happens. This is just a perfect encapsulation of why we need to think about scaling with price. Okay. Well, I want to grow my business, so I'm going to sign some more clients. And what happens is you max out your time as a founder, right? You're all busy and you think, all right, well, I just need to hire a team. But everything breaks because instead of focusing on scaling with price and building a solid foundation for the business, you don't even have the money to delegate. Okay. People make this mistake all the time. And all these levels that I'm going to talk about here, they all stack on each other. So if you miss one of them, which is the foundation, and price is the foundation, all of this other stuff isn't going to work. Okay. Because we need profits in order to do the things that we need to do to scale the business, which are going to be things like building systems, buying back our time, delegation, right? Spending money to solve problems, all these things that I'm going to talk about. Okay. So if you think all I need to do is have more clients to grow your business, I need you to rethink this. Okay. Scale with price and never stop raising your prices. The more that you can increase your price and increase your value, that is the North Star for your business. All right. And the last thing I'll say here is most people think being fully booked is a good sign. So if you think I have no more time, my schedule's fully maxed out, I've got nothing going on, the message that you should be thinking about is being fully booked is a signal from the market that your prices are too low. Okay. And you're going to need to build in headroom so you can do all the other stuff that I'm going to talk to you about that are going to get you from 100K to 500K. All right. That's why there's so many points about this topic, because if you don't do this, nothing else works. Okay. So the next point that I want to talk about is leveling up yourself, because often in order to increase price, we need to increase value, and we need to increase our side of the street in order to do that. So what does that normally look like in order to charge super high prices for your expertise? Well, I kind of see it as 3 things. I've done this, worked with a lot of clients. I see 3 areas that really are the areas you need to focus on. All right. So at the top of the list, of course, is expertise. All right. If you take this path of scaling an expert business, where you are focused on delivering the highest value possible and charging the highest price possible, well, it turns out you got to be good at what you're doing. And that's table stakes. I hope we're all on board with the idea that we want to continue to be better at our craft and that our goal is to get better and better. So, the more we invest in our personal growth, the more the business grows, right? So expertise, the way I like to think about it is deep expertise, broad context. So having one area or a small handful of areas where you can go deep all the way down to the freaking Mariana Trench, right? Deep, 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 deep. You are that person. There is no one who has as much subject matter expertise as you. But you need to combine that with broad context because your expertise needs to fit into the context of the world that you and your clients are living in. Okay, so that's the magic balance that I like to see, is going deep on one area plus broad context so you can see how everything fits together. All right, the last thing that's really important about expertise, and this is a really good litmus test to see if you're on the path for 100K or $500,000 and beyond. And just ask yourself this question, okay? Do my clients tell me what to do, or do I tell my clients what to do? Think about that for a second, okay? If your clients tell you what to do, and there's nothing wrong with this, you are an order taker. You receive a task list, order things you need to do from your clients, you go do them, and you get paid as a result. Okay, the next level, and to really jump up the price, 2, 3, 5, 10x the price, you need to skip over and start having your clients asking you what to do. Okay, instead of getting a task list from your clients of all the designs that you need to work on, you need to say, this is what we should be focusing on for design in your business right now, if you're a designer. Okay, and that's a big level up shift that needs to happen. And I'll talk a little bit more about how this fits into the context of your clients in the next one. Second thing that you need in order to charge high prices is you need sales skills. So when I was talking about the two different paths, I said one of the big levers is sales. And what you need to understand is the value of relationships and the value of mastering the sales process. Now, most people don't want to do this, right? They think if I can just not learn this, then I won't feel any pain. My life will be less, there'll be less friction. Sure, maybe I won't be able to charge as much as I possibly could, but I won't have to deal with rejection. I won't have to deal with putting myself out there. And I got to tell you, sales is not as difficult as people make it out to be. I've helped a lot of clients with this, and there are just a couple of limiting beliefs that need to be tweaked. And a lot of times you just need to see examples of how other people do it who are good at it to realize that it's not this like slimy, skeezy thing. And what I find is the more you have mastery in sales, the less sales feels like sales at all. It really just feels like having a conversation. I know that sounds kind of trite, and you're like, what are you talking about, dude? But I believe that the more you kind of transcend this and understand the fundamentals behind sales, which are essentially an agreement of trust between two parties, it just feels like a conversation and it doesn't feel so weird and painful. Second piece of the sales is getting over your hurdles, your hangups around saying large numbers. A lot of times, the only difference between someone doubling their price or charging what they're charging now is their lack of willingness to just say the number. And sometimes, many times, it can really just be that simple. I counsel clients all the time and I say, listen, just charge double. And they do it. And the client said yes. And they're like, oh, well, I would have just charged half of that. And sometimes it's really just saying big numbers. What I've seen is most entrepreneurs, most solopreneurs, especially those in creative fields, are not in danger of charging too much money. I would say 9 times out of 10, people tend to be too low on the value spectrum for the amount of value that they're creating. So learning the skill of saying big numbers and saying it confidently is important, which leads right into the last one. Okay, this is the last thing that you always need to be working on. These are kind of like the core foundational pillars for going from that 100K to 500K a year. And it is conviction. And what I mean by that is your ability to advocate for the value of your work. Okay, for you to say confidently, this is the value of my work in the marketplace. This is how it helps my clients, and to stand behind that. All right. And behind that, most people I hear this all the time, charge what you're worth, right? You need to just charge what you're worth. I think that's terrible advice. Okay. Because I think it mixes up the value of our work and our worth as a person. But with that being said, you should definitely charge what your work is worth. And that's where the hangups tend to happen. And these can be things around deep work, around self-esteem, and really believing at your core that, like, hey, I'm a person that's worthy of happiness. I'm a person that's worthy of success. And a lot of times getting from that 6-figure to 500K and beyond, and I'll talk more about this at the end, the last point, because I think it's that important, is really believing like, I deserve this. Not only do I deserve to be happy, not only do I deserve to succeed, but I deserve to capture a fair percentage of the value that I create for my clients. And when that happens, everyone wins, and it's just a great time. All right. So on the internal side of things, leveling up yourself 0 to 500K, deep expertise, broad context. Okay. Going from order taker to expert, understanding sales, building conviction, and advocating for your work. Those are the core skills. All right. So on the client side of things, a lot of times the book of business that you have at 6 figures is not going to be the book of business that gets you to 500K and beyond. And no matter how hard you try, your current business is not the business that will get you to the next milestone. And you actually are going to have to shed some clients. You're going to have to level up, okay? Because at the end of the day, when you increase your price, what are you doing? You're increasing the value. You're saying, price is your signal to the marketplace about what your worth is worth. And when you increase your price, you need to increase the value that you provide as well. So there's 2 ways that you can do it. Some people can get away, if they already have, a solid foundation with their clients, of just providing more, better value for their current clients. So saying, hey, you know what? We do this right now. We're actually going to do this with you as well. This is more value. It's going to be more valuable. Maybe it's like, I have a great set of clients. Right now, I just make websites for them. Okay, I'm going to actually provide strategic consulting on top of that, since I'm basically already doing it for free, and that's more value for them. So we'll charge more money and there'll be a better outcome. All right. But a lot of the times you also need to think about getting better clients. And what happens is, I like to think of this like fuel. Okay. So your work is fuel for a business or fuel for a person. Whatever it is. And the same fuel can power a lot of different machines or devices or whatever, but there'll be different outcomes. So you can put like gasoline into a lawnmower, right? And you put you put the gasoline in and it mows the lawn, okay? But then you can take the same gasoline and you can put it into a car, and that car will drive you from one city to another city. Riding on a lawnmower is not going to get you very far. And then you can take that same gasoline and you can put it in an airplane or in a rocket ship. And with the same fuel, the same work, the value can be magnified. Okay. So bigger clients tend to have a bigger vehicle that will benefit from your work, from your deep expertise at a much higher level, despite the fact that you're essentially doing the same work in any instance. Right? So bigger clients tend to be more value. So a lot of times, and this is it right here, right? Okay, the exact same service, the exact same thing that you do can be worth $1,000 to a solopreneur, 10 grand to a small business, 100 grand to a corporation. Those are just examples, right? But the work doesn't change and the value does change. All right. And the more you need to level up with your clients, the more you need to think about the value that you actually bring. And that means no longer pricing based on cost, and focusing on the value that you're creating for people. So for me, just to give you a sense of what like the final leveled up version of a quote unquote 500K solopreneur business, just so you can understand where I needed to ascend. My agency sweet spot was, I would look for these things for it to be a fit where I felt like I could provide a ton of value. Okay. 10 plus employees, $1 million plus in revenue. These are the minimums. I tend to work with a lot of nonprofits, or at least organizations that were like trying to do good for the world. They're missing design, creative, strategic support. They were looking to work with someone for a long time, and they could afford my minimum rate. All right. Those were the kind of categories that I leveled up to over a decade. And this was a process of continuously like iterating and building relationships and going higher and higher up the ladder. So it's not that like 100K businesses, they have these clients, and 500K businesses, they have these clients. It's more that the mindset is that you want to continue to ascend and provide more value. That's the difference between folks that make it to 500,000 and up and those that stay at 100K, is the willingness to continue to strategically level up and understand that that's a core part of your business. And if you just ignore that and just stay where you are, it's going to be really hard, to hit past maybe 100, 150K, maybe even 200. All right. So as you level up your clients, I encourage everyone, this is just really important, have a minimum rate. Okay. And continue to raise it. This just sets a minimum bar for you so that you know that you're always pushing forward on price. So my business, it was 60 grand. Like I'm not getting on the phone for less than 60 grand. Okay. And the last thing that I'll say about leveling up clients, and this is a big, 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 big shift. Okay. At the higher levels, and this only amplifies the higher you go up in business, optimizing for relationships. It is all about people. I cannot tell you how much your reputation, your relationships, and your network matter as you go higher up the ladder. And it's like a hack to skip a lot of steps. All right. So now would be a good time to take a detour. We've talked a lot about scaling with price, increasing value, and how important that is to go from 100K to 500K. But you're probably sitting there and maybe you're like, all right, dude, well, like, how do I actually do it? And this is the topic that I probably am most passionate about. I think a lot about it. I work with my clients very deeply on helping them work through these challenges and understand them. I gave you a little bit of a teaser there, but in terms of how to charge more, one, I have like a whole long, big lesson in this topic in How to Work Less, which is basically my course detailing the 10 years that I spent running that very profitable, very leveraged solopreneur business that was my agency. Okay. And I've taught a lot of people the method. Many of these lessons came from those learnings as well. But in addition to that, this is the number one thing I work on with my clients. And what I see is it's a combination of increasing value, okay, of being able to articulate the value, of increasing the price and increasing your conviction. And long term, what I'm working on right now, I'm actively writing this right now, is a book about it based on the work with my clients. And what I find, there are basically two things that help businesses charge more. And there's a lot of tactical, practical stuff that you need to understand, which are going to be around value pricing, the sales process, how to like communicate effectively with clients, all this kind of stuff. And then there's a whole ton of internal work that actually needs to be done. Because if it was just as easy as saying, okay, double your rates, everyone would do it, and people don't. And a good litmus test to see where you are, and I call this test the agent test or the agent gap. And it's a really, really simple thought experiment that allows you to see where your gaps in pricing are and where they have nothing to do with a skill gap and maybe more to do with an internal gap. So the question that you need to ask yourself is, if I had a world-class agent, so how like athletes, artists, like what else? Writers, sometimes they have agents who advocate on behalf of their work to the market. So imagine that you had an agent that focused specifically on selling whatever it is that you do for you. Now, the next question you need to ask yourself is, what price would they be charging? And the follow-up to that is, why isn't that the price that you're currently charging? Because I can tell you, whoever is listening to this or watching this, if I got on a sales call with your client, I guarantee I would be down to advocate for a price that is much, much higher than whatever you're charging. And they would probably say yes. Okay? Because most people are in no danger of charging too high prices. It's the reality of the situation. So when you pay attention to that agent gap and you say, okay, what's the price my agent would charge? What's the price I'm currently charging? Why is there a gap there? And where does that come from? That'll help you uncover some of the deep roots behind why you may be undercharging. All right, but I also will give you some tactical, practical stuff here. These are just a couple of tips that I throw out a lot. They tend to move the needle pretty quickly, and they're easy. They're basically painless. So 4 tactics in our detour, and then we'll get back into the other 5 tips at the end. Okay, so tactic number 1 is what I call FU pricing. So, when you get a client or a customer that comes in through the pipeline, and for one reason or another, you're like not ecstatic to work with them. Maybe there's like not quite a vibe alignment, or you're not like excited to work with them. Maybe it's not a project that you would normally do. What I encourage people to do is throw out an FU price. And what that basically means, and I don't mean it in a bad way, is pitching 2 to 3 times your regular price to clients that you really wouldn't want to work with anyway. Okay. And if you charge 2 to 3 times the price, maybe that incentivizes enough to be worth it. And every time people do this experiment, like 90% of the time, people end up still saying yes. And that's a really important signal that the prices that you think you should be charging, the market is valuing much, much higher. And when you sell something for 3 times what you normally charge to a client that you weren't even going to work with, it should help you to start to question, where am I really at on pricing? Okay. Second one is just a good rule that I think everyone should follow, and it is this philosophy that as you continue to level up, we're all getting better at our craft. We're all like becoming better at the work that we do. You should always be thinking about increasing your prices. So never sell the next client for the same price. Always bump that up over time. And that's just a great way to like constantly be pushing the limits of price, because that's like your number one lever as a solopreneur. All right. Next one is a really simple positioning hack. There are a bunch like this, but this is the one that's the most obvious. How your client perceives you in their brain determines the value that they think you're bringing to the table. And for better or for worse, an agency is able to command rates that are 2 to 5 times what a quote unquote freelancer can do. And that is only a factor of positioning. So it often makes sense to position yourself as an entity rather than an individual freelancer. Okay, so definitely think about how you position your work in terms of charging more and pricing. All right, and the last one, I talked about this a bit already, but usually the biggest hack is you just need to say larger numbers. Okay, you need to articulate that to the clients. Say, instead of normally I do this price, I'm going to say double it. Okay, and you just need to get into the habit of learning how to say bigger numbers, because most pricing things are just coming from like a deep fear of rejection and scarcity. All right, so that's our detour. Let's get back into it and talk about the last 5 shifts that need to take place. And you'll notice that I basically spent the first half, more or less, talking about scaling with price and how that needs to happen, because that is literally the lever that allows us to do all the other things that we're going to talk about kind of in the second half. All right, so when you are solving problems with your clients and in your business, how you position how you solve them and how you approach them is going to make a big difference in how much you can charge. And a lot of times entrepreneurs, solopreneurs will price their work and position their work in a way that is not advantageous. So I'll give you one example that I'd love to come back to, which is selling deliverables instead of outcomes. I cannot tell you how often people say, oh, I make websites or I do coaching. The fact of the matter is, no one wants designs. No one wants a website. No one wants a strategy. People come to us because they want the outcomes that our work creates. Okay, so you need to talk about the outcomes. No one really cares about a website. They want what a website does. And what does a website do? Well, it might bring in more leads for the business. So don't talk about, the color of the freaking button on the form on the website, or your favorite typefaces or whatever that you care about. Talk about what the client or the customer actually cares about. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. And this goes right back into what we were talking about before, which is positioning. I have a client and she is a deck designer. She's really good at what she does. She worked with a lot of great clients. And what we found is by shifting the positioning of how she describes her work over time, it has unlocked the ability to charge much, much higher prices. Okay, so when she started, she was basically like, okay, well, I'm a deck designer and I'm a freelancer. And basically what I do is, you send me, your rough outline or your slides and I make them pretty and I design them. And, what we found is there's a cap to that, right? Because people only value that to a certain degree. But what we realize is she's actually really freaking good at what she does. And there are all these things that she's doing behind the scenes that, are not part of just being a deck designer that she wasn't advocating for. So as we shifted and, she's able to get up to charging, 5 figures or whatever, moving from deck designer to deck consultant. And, a deck consultant is going to help you with more than just pushing pixels around the screen. They're going to help you to come up with the strategy and the messaging and the flow and, telling the story and things like that. But at the highest level, right, when we move from, so like deck designer is selling a deliverable, right? Deck consultant is basically selling thinking. But at the highest level of value is when you're selling outcomes. And when people make pitch decks, what do they want? What is the outcome that they want? Okay, it's not complicated. They want to close a deal. They want to get funding. So if you can change your positioning from I'm a deck designer to I close deals, okay? And the medium that I do that is through pitch decks, but that's just the medium. Okay, what's actually happening is I close deals because I understand positioning, storytelling, the deal process, how to craft a pitch, all of these things. And as a result, my clients close deals. And, a perfect example is like a company that's raising $100 million, that deck is worth everything to them. It could be the difference between $0 of investment and $100 million of investment. So a fair amount of value capture from that to help them close the deal as an expert is worth a lot of money. Okay, that's my spiel on that. I already talked about this, but just to recap, transitioning from order taker to expert, very, very important. So this is moving from your clients telling you what to do to your clients asking you what to do. And I can tell you that the price that you can charge is a factor of 5 to 10x when you are dictating the strategy as opposed to I just get a list in an email. All right, last thing you need to do, this is really important, is understanding how your work relates to business outcomes. Now, this is why back here, where did I say this? Yes, deep expertise, broad context. When we have deep expertise and no context, it really caps the ability to charge a lot of money. So let's say you're, I don't know, an incredible website designer, UX designer or something, but you're not necessarily too clear on how that work impacts the bottom line of your client's business. Well, why do businesses hire UX designers? I hate to break it to you, it's to make money, okay? But when you have deep expertise, but you don't understand context, how you describe your work and how you advocate for it is not going to be ideal, okay? So you need to understand how your work relates to your business outcomes of your clients and talk about it in that way. So if you're talking to a startup, you got to show them how to get more users. If you're talking to an agency, show them how you get them more leads. Or if you're talking to a nonprofit, show them how you get more donors. You need to see how your work fits into the context of your client's life or your client's business. That is super, super important. So stop talking about what you care about. Start talking about how your work relates to what they care about. Okay? Those are hacks. That's how to increase value. Okay? That is how to actively increase the value for your clients. Alrighty, getting into more meat. So we're charging a whole buttload more money. We are, providing a ton more value. We probably have some better clients, and we're feeling pretty good. But now we need to understand, well, how does this all fit into our business? All right, and the shift from 100K to 500K as a solopreneur is you need to recommit to this idea that your time is the gold in the business. Your time as the business owner is the ultimate fuel for everything that happens. And every hour, it has to count. Like you can, you can do stuff isn't moving the needle, but why would you do that? You know, like let's focus on stuff that is meaningful. And one big lesson that I see, and this helps a lot of times people to free up some time when they're kind of maxed out on time, is this idea that not all tasks are equal. And the way I think about it is your to-do list is not your priorities list, okay? Just because something is on your to-do list does not mean it is a priority. And a lot of times we don't rank our to-do list and we don't compare it to what the big picture looks like, okay? So even though you can spend your time responding to emails and DMs and coffee requests, that is not needle-moving tasks. So an email is not as valuable as a business strategy. A DM is not as valuable as your next project. A request for coffee is not as valuable as finding clients. Okay, so understanding that at the core of everything, we need to protect our time and we need to spend it on things that are actually important. All right, also talking about your time. Spend more time working on your business as opposed to in it. And this will connect to a lot of the things in the back half. Your role as a business owner, okay, is to think big picture. You should be thinking about strategy. You should be thinking about ideas. You should be thinking about quality control. And as a result, you need space. I call this idea mind space. This is really important. Okay, so if you say, I want to devote, and you don't have to use specific numbers, but if you say, I want to devote 40 hours to working this week, most people will take that to mean I am going to spend 40 hours sitting at my desk doing stuff. All right. And the way I see this is we need to create headroom, okay? Space to think, space to come up with ideas that aren't straight in front of your face in the inbox. You need space to grow, to think contextually about your business outside of the day-to-day stuff. You need headroom to do that. And what I see is as you get up to that $500,000 level, more time is spent thinking about the business as opposed to being in the business. All right. Last thing I'll say about this is why we spend so much time talking about price is because it unlocks everything else that we need to do here. Higher prices you can charge, you need less clients, you can get more bang for your buck, and you have more time, right? You also have higher margins to delegate and spend money to buy time, and you have more space on your calendar to create systems and to think holistically, big picture about your business so you can make these larger strategic moves. All right. So big move is understanding that like the core fuel of the business is your time and really making sure that you use it wisely. Okay. Number 8, and this is huge. Oh my gosh. If you don't do this, it's really hard to break out of 100K. This is what I call a systems builder mindset. Oh, got some extra space here. Let's delete that. Okay. Huge mindset shift. This is the shift from get to 6 figures, I'm basically going to do pretty much everything, to anything that I can turn into a system, I should do. And that means spending way more time building systems than doing tasks. And the beauty of building systems is it allows you to extend your productivity beyond your time. And we said, your time is the gold. It allows you to complete projects, goals, and tasks without sticking more hours in from you. And the goal is to create systems for every area of your business. And if you go back in my backlog or look at my podcast or whatever, I talk about this a lot. There's a lot of resources that I can, so I'm not going to go deep into it, but I know that this is one of the key mindsets that you need to adopt to go from 100 to 500K. So like, here's an example, right? These are some of the areas where you need to start thinking about building systems. So like core areas, marketing, sales, profit generation, fulfillment, communication, retention. There are all these different areas of your business where they are ripe for system building. And at every different area, you can go deeper and you can ask yourself, how can this be a system? This is how I was able to, I'll give you one example because there's just so many, okay? So I created a newsletter. It's called Work Less Wednesday. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed to it, we're 44 minutes in. Like, what are you doing? I hope you trust me enough to want to read that. Worklesswednesday.com. You can subscribe to that. I write it every week, okay? And it takes me about 90 minutes, start to finish, to do the whole thing. But what I can tell you is that when I began that process, it would take me anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. Okay. And the reason being was it's not like it took me 10 hours to write the thing. It was all of the other ways that the email fits into my business that I was doing originally. So not only did I have to write the thing, but after that, I had to distribute it. And I am a big fan of making sure that you advocate for the work that you create. Like, I just hate when people spend a bunch of time creating something like really awesome and then they post like one tweet and they're like, yeah, no, I marketed it. So most of the back end was all of these repeatable tasks that I turned into systems to distribute the newsletter. And basically, I got it from 10 hours down to 90 minutes. And I realized that the only 10% of that process where I needed to do it, where it was my zone of genius, was writing the newsletter. So all I do is I sit down, I write the thing, and then my systems take over. And it would be things like, my assistant taking it, putting into the correct templates that we've defined, following the SOPs, distributing it in all the places across all the social media outlets, placing it where it needs to go, writing up tweets, like all of this stuff to promote it. I don't need to be doing, and that's the beauty of systems, because you have to look at how that compounds over time. So imagine if it took me 10 hours, and maybe 10's an exaggeration, but whatever. Imagine if it took me 10 hours to write, distribute, and market, the newsletter every single week. Over the course of a year, that's 520 hours of my time, right? The most important thing as a solo business owner. Compare that to if it only takes 90 minutes and multiply that out. I don't know, it's probably 75 hours. So the difference between 75 hours over the course of a year and 520. That is the power of systems builder mindsets. And if you don't do this, and this is why people get locked in at six figures, because they don't build the systems. And yeah, they just never have any time. So think about how much free time I got back that compounds over years. I've been writing this newsletter for like 3 years now. Can you imagine if I just never built the system? But that's the life that many people are living. And that's a huge, huge hack. Okay, so quickly, the 5 types of systems that I tend to advocate for in entrepreneurship for solopreneurs. Number 1 is strategies. Okay, so I believe the most important system, this is kind of counterintuitive, is actually what you do and taking the time to think about your business holistically, globally, and defining, what do I actually do here? Okay. And at the beginning, I told you in this hack, this is the strategy, right? You need to pick a path. Okay. So whether that is scaling by price or scaling with marketing, you need to pick one of those things. Okay. Because if you don't have that, it's really hard to build systems that work well. All right. So your strategy is your number 1 system. And that'll be like, what's my offer? What's my process? What's my market? What am I even going for? Second system, policies. Big fan of policies. Okay. And all policies are defining what you don't do. You need to subtract in business to grow. And anything that removes decisions or set boundaries is an example of a policy. All right. On top of that, your more kind of tactical, practical triumvirate is SOPs, templates, and tools. SOPs are anything that can be turned into a checklist. Previously, I would say SOPs, yep, they go to your assistant or they go to a freelancer. Add a third one in there. You can go to AI too now as well. And I think we're only going to see that happen more. Number 4 are templates, which are repeatable and reusable elements. Big fan of that. I think they really move the needle. And then tools, which are just apps and programs that save time. All these things fit together, but you need to have a systems builder mindset because, like I said, your time is the gold. If you want more like systems stuff, I have a free training. There's probably a link below this where you can just click on it, startbuildingsystems.com. It's an email training. I think I send you like 7 emails over the course of the week and basically just walk you through how to think about systems, show like just a small sample of some of the systems that I built in my business. And then if you like really want to go hard in how to work less, the course, there's actually 4 hours of trainings on systems plus all of this other stuff. We're also building out a pretty sweet bonus edition on systems, updating with the latest AI stuff that I'm working on. So that's a thing too, but more than anything else, you need the mindset. Okay. All right. Number 9, this is huge. Okay. And this is just a fundamental belief that you need to rewire in your brain It is spending money to buy time. And it's as simple as this. It is rewiring your brain to see money instead of a scarce thing that must be saved at all costs, seeing it as a tool that can be deployed for a variety of things, including purchasing time and buying back your time. What did I say? Your time is the gold. You need to think of it that way. All right. And one of the best ways to spend money to buy time is to delegate. And the way that I think about delegation in my business is I call it 80-20 delegation. And my goal is if I can delegate something where I do the first 10%, which is basically the strategy and the plan, and the last 10%, which is the polishing, putting my stamp on it, that's pretty freaking ideal. You can save a lot of money that way and a lot of time. And I call this low risk delegation. This is a chart here. I've kind of always been known for wanting to work with contractors, freelancers, and I have a whole process and thought thing behind this. But it's basically the idea that low risk delegation or working with contractors allows you to scale up and down your expenses with your revenue, with your profit, so that even though like sometimes the solopreneur revenue can be lumpy, right, up and down, we're always staying profitable and you can scale up and down capacity as needed. All right. So the combination of 80-20 delegation and low risk delegation is the way that I would do it as a solopreneur. All right. Last thing with spending money to buy time is purchasing perspective. Oh my gosh. Underrated. Even though this is like reach proliferation, I still think people aren't doing it as much as they should. And, I shared a story on Threads and it's my fault because I didn't make it interesting enough for people to want to like it, but I'll just share it here now as well. Some of the biggest, most valuable insights that I've gotten in my business, I have paid like $150 for. Now, don't get me wrong. I've invested in like serious mentorship, consulting, like, 5-figure, like big investments. I've done that as well. And I can't say enough about it, but I've also gained a ton of insights by strategically purchasing the time and expertise of people that I want to learn from. And the hack here is that if someone does something or has something that you want and you want to pick their brain, most people don't get asked this very often. A lot of people ask people to pick their brain for free. Hey, can I just like ask you a couple questions? Like, hey, can we catch up for coffee? Whatever. If you go to an expert, right? And this is someone who's not like, a coach consultant person, but like someone with deep expertise, and you want to learn something that they know. I can't tell you how many times I've said, listen, I really value your time. I really just want to pick your brain. I want to understand how you do this thing. Can we sit down and talk about it? And I really value your time, so I want to pay you whatever your rate is. So tell me however much you want to pay me for an hour of your time. People are ecstatic to do it. They love to talk about their work. They love when people actually value their work. And I have gotten, oh my gosh, so many insights from this that it's highly, highly, highly underrated. Okay. But you can also spend money to skip mistakes. This is really important. A lot of people sell like productized information, and essentially what you're buying when you purchase something like that is you are spending money to not have to go through the pain that they went through and the lessons that they learned. So you're paying to skip that process. But I also think paying money to get perspective on decisions is really smart too. And I do this all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen these situations where, an entrepreneur has a bright idea and they don't run it by anyone. And they basically go off on like a shiny object side quest for 6 months, pursuing something that they think is a good idea. But if they just shared it with like someone in their network or a mentor or whatever, and just talked through their thinking process behind it, they would realize that it isn't a good idea. And the most valuable thing they could do is just stop it completely. But instead they run through it, learn the lesson themselves. 6 months pass, right? And what did we lose during that time? All of our time that we could have been spending there. So I highly recommend this is like, and you don't have to spend a ton of money to do this. I'm not saying like spend $1 bazillion or anything like that. Spending money to buy time, spending money to buy perspective, spending money to delegate is a core shift that needs to happen to go from 100K to $500,000. and beyond. All right. And the last one that I'll leave you with is what I call calibrating your success thermostat. This is something that does not go away at any level. Okay. So at many levels of success, we see this come up over and over again. It really has a lot to do with our internal beliefs about ourselves, about success, about being worthy of happiness. And you see it like where at certain price breaks, people tend to get stuck, right? So they're like, stuck at 100 grand, stuck at 200 grand, stuck at 500,000, stuck at $1 million. Like you'll see it all the way up. Like it never stops. Stuck at 10 million, stuck at 100 million, whatever it is. And the success thermostat is basically this idea that we all have this number in our head that we see is like our number. Like I'm a $100,000 kind of guy, and when that thermostat goes below that, we get our ass into gear and we make it happen. And, let's say like a couple of slow months, we like turn it on and actually work and try and get back up to the 100K. Okay. But what happens is as the number gets higher, a lot of times, we don't know how to respond to success. So we'll do things like self-sabotage or take our foot off the gas and like chill for a bit. And then we just see ourselves like slowly come back down to equilibrium. Okay. So one of the big shifts, and this is a lifelong shift, is understanding that there is a mindset where the goal is to not set these breakpoints where you get stuck. And there are a lot of ways you can work through this. Accountability helps. What I've also found is being in rooms with people that have broken past my success thermostat settings is also really useful a lot of the time. But also a ton of it is internal stuff, deep work, journaling, going to therapy, understanding like, why do I feel this way? Like, why do I feel like I can't be happy? Or, whatever your story is. Why do I stop working once I reach a certain number? And this is a big one that you will see, and probably, at a deep level, a major reason holding people back from that 100K to 500K. So if you feel like, and the symptom for the success thermostat thing is, if you have been at the same revenue, like weirdly consistent, or profit weirdly consistently for a couple of years or like many years, if you're like, yeah, like I've made $110,000, like almost exactly for the last 4 years, you're potentially dealing with a success thermostat issue. Okay. And we need to be able to work through that stuff so that you can continue to grow. All right. So those are 10 shifts to go from 100K to 500K a year. What else do I want to say? Okay. The TLDR, basically. Okay. Raise prices, build systems, get better clients, increase the value, delegate more. And this is basically a virtuous cycle that you'll continue to do over and over again. All of these things build on each other. They never stop compounding. And that's the beauty of it. It's like a staircase that continuously circles up. Okay. And the higher prices you have, the more time you have, the more space you have to delegate, the better clients you can get, the more systems you can build. And it's just awesome. It's pretty sweet. Okay. So that's like the mindset that you need to switch to, is basically this right here. And most people are not pursuing this mindset at the 100K level. One other note that I wanted to say, after writing this, I can already think of 10 more that I want to talk about. So let me know in the comments, shoot me an email if you're listening to the podcast. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear a part 2 with 10 more. I kind of already have them locked and loaded, but if this is interesting to people, I have some other deeper insights. Maybe I'll talk a bit more about this idea of the marketing business kind of zero fulfillment path being an avenue as well. All right. Last thing that I'll say is the reason I record these podcasts is so that people who resonate with me as an entrepreneur can find me. And there are a bunch of different ways that you can work with me. It's below. I do a lot of work helping entrepreneurs to grow from that 100K, 250K, 500K plus solopreneur profit level. And if that's something you're interested in and you want to spend more time with me, that's available. But yeah, I don't know. Look below this. There's more information there. Either way, I hope this was helpful for you. Please apply this stuff. There's a big difference between just consuming and actually absorbing and taking notes and learning. I hope that you take notes and learn from this. All right. That's it for me. Hope you enjoyed.